Joining us now, retired Admiral James Stavridis, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, and William Cohn, former Secretary of Defense during the Clinton administration and earlier a Republican senator from Maine. Admiral, let's start with that warship. We're told by a senior defense official today that the fire is extensive. They still don't know the cause. They don't know anything about crew casualties. But you spoke earlier on Morning Joe about the level of incompetence we're seeing both in the ground war and also at sea.
Yeah, it's almost as though, having shown the world how badly the Russian army can perform, the Russian Navy got jealous and decided, you know, we can show that we're pretty incompetent, too. And that's what they've done here, because either explanation of what has just happened, either an internal ammunition explosion, really bad, or a missile got through and hit you. And Andrea, I'm going to bet it's a combination. In other words, missile hit, probably got into some of the ammunition stores, and the crew, which ought to be trained to conduct the damage control, as we call it in the Navy, failed to do that, had to evacuate the ship. Now it's under tow. We'll see if it comes back at all. And this is a big, important ship named after the capital of the country, Moscow, Moskva, and also had long-range strike missiles. You can see them on the sides of the ship there. Very capable class of ship, about 15,000 tons. This is a real blow to the Russian Navy and to their military's morale.
And, Admiral, we've got these $800 million in additional military aid approved by the President, the Secretary of State, to draw down from existing stocks, although those stocks are dwindling on some of this equipment. Artillery rounds, armored carriers, defense boats. How can all of this help the conflict that we're expecting very shortly in the East?
The shopping list that was filled was an absolutely exceptionally good set of tools to put in the hands of this very spirited, brave, determined Ukrainian military. You're showing it now. These are precisely the kind of weapon systems that will be needed as this phase of the battle perhaps moves to a larger set piece on the central plains of southeastern Ukraine. The only thing I would add to this, Andrea, would be two items. One would be to get them fighter aircraft, and there are a couple different ways of doing that. I know it's complicated and hard, but I think that would help in a ground fight because those fighters could also attack tanks. And then secondly, how about some more of those anti-ship cruise missiles? Those can be used to keep the Russians way out at sea, which is where the Ukrainians want them.
Exactly, to protect Odessa in particular right now from attack. Exactly. Bill Cohn, Secretary Cohn, we're hearing that the Russians are pushing back forcefully on NATO expansion by Sweden and Finland, which the leaders of those countries say could happen, or their request at least could happen in weeks. How do you think that would impact the reaction? The Kremlin is threatening all kinds of strong reaction if they abandon their historic neutrality.
Well, I think there would be a strong reaction. If Putin is paranoid about Ukraine, you can imagine he'll be even more paranoid about either Sweden, Finland, or both. But both countries have seen the handwriting on the wall, and it's written in Ukrainian blood. They've seen what Putin is capable of, even though President Zelensky has said on multiple occasions, almost from the beginning, I will be willing to talk about neutrality. I want to find a solution here that will have to end in diplomatic solution. And Putin said, no, I'm going to basically destroy you and your country. So I think other countries, such as Sweden and Finland, are saying, there's a need for us to join a collective defense because alone we could be subject to the same kind of thing that Putin is doing. So I think I understand their reaction at this point. I would be positive to it, but I think the reality is you would have to have unanimous consent from the NATO countries, and now you have the French suggesting that there should be a rapprochement as far as Marine Le Pen wants to have a new relationship with Russia. So the French may not be as willing. And frankly, in the United States, there are some who are pro-Putin. So it's problematic at this point, but anything is possible.
And in fact, Marine Le Pen, she is in a tough election challenging Macron, and that's within a couple of weeks now. So in that runoff election, so we don't know what power she might have, as well as what vote she might pull, and this would have to at least be approved for ratification by two-thirds of the U.S. Senate. And as you point out, we don't know where the Senate is. For both you and the Admiral, I want to play something that we just heard from CIA Director Bill Burns at a speech in Atlanta just moments ago. Notably, he was the former U.S. ambassador in Russia, as well as Deputy Secretary of State. Let's watch.
I was the U.S. ambassador in Moscow 15 years ago and have watched over the years as Putin has stewed in a combustible combination of grievance and ambition and insecurity. Every day, Putin demonstrates that declining powers can be at least as disruptive as rising ones.
Secretary Cohn, that is a warning from really our best expert on Russia in the U.S. government right now.
Well, he's precisely right. We know that Russia is a declining power because all they have is really, they have oil, gas, and guns. That's what they produce. Beyond that, they're not preparing, Putin is not preparing his people for an educated population to cope with the 21st century challenges. So they are going to be, are in the process of a declining power, as we're seeing more and more effort being made to decarbonize. He wants to denazify, what a false statement that is, but we want to decarbonize the atmosphere, and other countries, including the United States, are taking steps. So the future for Putin is, in the long term, medium term, is not great.
And Admiral Stavridis, in the midst of all this, the EU is inching towards an energy ban, not having moved there previously, having voted just a week or two ago not to do this. But again, they're talking about putting it out for agreement by the EU, the 27 nations, but delaying that action until after the French elections, hoping not to cause an anticipatory rise in gas prices, which would potentially help Marine Le Pen against Macron.
Indeed, a complex equation with a lot of moving parts in it. Certainly, I've got to say this, see paragraph 1, where the United States for a decade has said to our European friends and colleagues, don't put yourself in the position of being dependent on Russian gas. We are where we are. It's going to take them a year or two to build the infrastructure to capitalize, for example, on American liquefied natural gas. There are solutions to this to include nuclear power, but all of them take time, Andrea. So it's a challenge. But I think I've been pleasantly surprised at how the European Union thus far has hung together on these sanctions, has stood with us together. If there's a silver lining in this awful situation, it is the Western unity that we see.
And Secretary Cohen, I just wanted to read exactly from our team looking at the tape of what the president said. Maybe a little bit hard to hear, but what he said when asked, the question was, will you send officials to Ukraine? He was boarding Air Force One under the wing, so there's a lot of engine noise. And then, will you send senior officials to Ukraine? And the president responded, well, we're making that decision now. Follow-up question, who will you send? And the president answered sarcastically, are you ready to go? To the reporter. So that's where we left it. But Secretary Cohen, as a former Secretary of Defense, you know exactly what would be entailed in moving anyone as senior as the president or vice president of the United States into a war zone. We saw what happened in Lviv, being attacked just as I was in Warsaw and live on the air when Lviv was attacked, just as the president was about to give his major speech and was arriving there on the border. Fleeing refugees.
Well, he didn't ask you whether you were willing to go, because the answer would have been yes. And all of the networks going over, sending their journalists into harm's way. So, yeah, the reporters are out there. Thank goodness they are, and you are, because the people are getting the truth. As far as the president going, it would be a covert mission at best. It would be very, very quiet, slipping in, slipping out. But that's hard to do for a president. And I don't think it's necessary. We don't have to get into competition with a Brits or anyone else. What we need to do is send military equipment, not the head of our country. Lloyd Austin, I'm sure, would be happy to go in terms of showing that we're with them. But again, morale booster, that's a good thing. But I don't think we should put anybody in danger at the highest levels. If it can be done safely, let's do it.
Thanks so much, Secretary Cohen. And as always, to you as well, Admiral Stavridis.